Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is another episode of Nufftingz Speaks where we're going to be talking about uncut stuff. You know what I mean? I keep changing my little slogan. I don't know why. But, today was a funny day. This is not Pokemon related, but I woke up and I logged into one of my mobile games that I play, this Dragon Ball Z game, right? And and somebody said to me in the chat, they go, "Hey Nuff, why do you sound so white?" I'm like, okay. They're like, you sound like a white guy. You sound like a frat kid. And I'm like, oh, like we thought you were black. And I'm like, well, I thought about it and I was like, oh my God, this is actually something to talk about. So what I said in the chat was, I said, well, when I was growing up, my mom is self-employed, right? And she had me talk like a normal person. So there was no slang when I would answer the phones, right? Because, business calls, you can't sound like, hey, yo, what's up, bro? Or, have the Jamaican accent, be like, yo, wagwan, Bregin. Like, you can't do all that, right? You got to sound white. Like, literally, that's really what it was. Like, you had to sound professional, not white, but you had to sound professional, right? So the thing was, I'm gonna explain it to you like this, right? I was thinking about it after. I'm like, this would be a good thing to talk about. So, growing up, right, my mom, it's my grandma. My grandma raised me, right? But I call her mom. She was, and she still is till now. She's self-employed. She's a seamstress, right? When I was small, even before I was born, she was running a big manufacturing business. Where she would manufacture clothes for like McDonald's, and this is like in the 80s, right? So, she early 80s, probably late 70s, early 80s. So she would manufacture clothes for like McDonald's, for hotels with this big company in Toronto called Sally For Me, right? So the joke was my mom and Sally were actually good friends. Now, here's the thing about my mom. She came here from Jamaica in 1969. And the thing about my 69 giggity, but my mom, she's a very intelligent woman. But the problem was growing up in Jamaica, she grew up really poor. So she never got the schooling that she wanted. And what I mean is, my great grandma, she was poor. Like they lived in a really poor area of Jamaica. And I mean, when I mean poor, I don't mean like city poor. I mean like country poor. So, um, back when my grandma was small, they used to, go to, God, what she used to call it? It was something like they would, every morning before school, they'd have to go and get rice from the rice fields. They'd have to fetch water because they didn't have like washroom inside. They didn't have like a shower. They were poor. Like if you go to where they live now, it's totally different. Everything is built. Not everything is built up. It was built up more, but they were on like I think 4 or 6 acres of farmland. But anyways, um, and you had to pay to go to school. It's not like North America where they take money out of your like. It's like, how do I explain this? It's like when you send your kids to school and the government covers it. Like it wasn't like that out there. So um, I think even now you still have to pay to go to school. But anywho, so my great grandma had other children. My mom was the oldest, right? So when the other children were born, she had to watch them while my great grandma would go and sell stuff at the market and whatever, right? And when my grandma talks about it, she doesn't talk about it in a negative light. She'll say stuff like, she really got to enjoy life, like she got to go fishing, and she would tell you stories of like when they would catch like crabs and lobsters, and when my great grandma would cook the lobsters and how amazing it was. Like she doesn't hold ill will, but she is always disappointed she never got to go to school. My grandma wanted to be a nurse, right? But at a young age, she was always sewing. Like she was really good at sewing, right? So, it was one of those things where she never got to go to school, and she tells me that when she would see the children going to school and she had to stay home and watch, her siblings, she would just start crying. Like she would just like she would like, Rob, I used to bawl, and she would just be like, and she doesn't get emotional now, but you could tell it in her face, like she's so disappointed. Um, so when she came here, she had already had children. So she came here at a young age and, she had to work. They weren't giving you anything free in the 60s in Canada, like you weren't getting support to go to school. You weren't getting, anything like that. So, um, even though she never got to go to school the way she wanted, she's extremely bright. A very smart woman, very strong woman. But the thing was like she came here, like I said, 1969, and when she came here, her goal was to get her children out here, to get them out, and in my mom's words, to get them out in the bush. Like she never wanted them to stay in the poor life because even like sometimes it was so bad that they didn't have shoes. Like they would have to, like, when you have a pencil, they would share a pencil, stuff like that, right? So she came out here, she worked, factory jobs and whatever, and she would sponsor her kids, right? And it's not like now, like in Canada right now, people just come over here without getting sponsored. But back then, you had to sponsor somebody, and you had to, be liable for, like, you had to be in control of them for 10 years. Like they were under your rule. So for instance, like if that person in 10 years does something wrong, it's your issue to deal with, like that kind of stuff, right? I don't know. It's more detailed than that, but that's just the gist of it, right? So, um, eventually she opened her business and she had a big manufacturing because she knew, like, going back to the previous story, she knew the lady Sally Formy. And because my mom wasn't, business savvy like that, she was supposed to go into partnership with Sally Formy, but Sally was like, you know, a businesswoman, and she never. When the lawyers that came up to her to say, okay, half goes to Hyacinth, that's my mom's name, and half goes to you, and you go into partnership together. Sally wouldn't sign the paper. She was like, "No, nah, I'm not doing it." So, anywho, Sally had her business, and then my mom had hers, and Sally was able to build hers. But I think the reason why Sally was able to build hers because she put business first, and my mom put family first. And I think now my mom understands that, that wasn't the right move. She wanted to build the business and then give it to her kids and they run it. But the kids were never interested in it, right? So, and I mean, because I'm the grandson, right? So it doesn't really go to me, but like her kids were not interested. So, it was one of those things, right? But going back to the whole sounding white thing. So when my mom downsized her place just to manufacture for smaller companies and all that, because how it worked, it was that her contracts were through Sally Formy. So eventually, like in the 90s, they weren't working for McDonald's anymore. They were doing mostly hotels. So my mom would have like, 6 workers or whatever. At the beginning when she had her big place in Toronto, she had like 15 workers, 6 home workers, like, 16 on-site workers, and then she had like 6 people that worked at home, right? So they worked at home with piecework and all that. So when she downsized, she came to Mississauga and she had her small business there, made good money. She started doing custom stuff too. So you'd have like customers come in, and if they want like a wedding dress or whatever, they would come for fittings or whatever. But she still had the manufacturing side. The manufacturing side, though, it was mostly like blouses and stuff that they'd wear at a hotel for like the employees and stuff. So it was, you know, she used to go on like trips to like hotel openings, and it was a lot of cool stuff she did. But the whole thing was when you look at the whole talking white thing, like people are saying to me, when you answer the phone, right? If you sound unappealing, people don't want to work with you, right? So I had to answer the phone as, hello, like, I had to be extremely, pleasant and professional. Um, and I had to have like a soft, I couldn't be like, too much bass in my voice. I had to be like very, welcoming. But there was times when, my mom would do it too. Like she's Jamaican, right? And she got that strong Jamaican accent. But when white people call, it's like she's so sweet, right? The thing is, sometimes people would think that she was white or I was white. And when the customers would come, they would see like the white people that were working for my mom, and they would go to her and be like, "Hello, Hyacinth," and they would just walk past my mom being the black lady. They would just walk right past her, but go to the white people. And we even had like Arab people that work for us too. We had, Vietnamese people. There was a lot of people we had. And they would just walk past my mom and they would talk to everybody else but her. So they would go, "Oh, the boss is right there." And they would look at my mom. And this happened a couple times. I'm not saying this happened all the time. Like it happened, I swear, maybe 5 times. And they would look at my mom and be like, "Oh, you're the boss?" "Yes." "Oh, okay." And then they would just leave because they didn't want to work. They didn't want a black woman working for her, working for them, which was really weird. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that that was what they were thinking, but it gave that vibe where it's like, oh, this black lady, because they would never talk to her first. Like, they would just walk past her. And it was like, it was weird. Like you would see that racism all the time. So it was just weird. I mean, I don't know if it's really racism or they just didn't want her to work for them. It's not like my mom looked like she was broke or anything. Like she was a professional woman. She dressed right. Like think of it like this. If you have a grandma or a mother that's in their 70s right now, how they dress is right now is how my mom would dress. You know what I mean? Because they're around the same age, right? So, like they were very, like you never see women like that were like dressing unprofessional. They always dressed professional. They didn't show too much. They were just, you know, professional women, right? So, it was one of those things where you'd see that all the time. And I would just be like, at a young age, I didn't really understand the whole racism thing. But, she would see it and she didn't even care. She'd be like, well, they're going to miss out on good work. And that's really what it was. Her work was outstanding. And even now, she's still, you know, good at her job. She's been doing it for so long. And, it's one of those things where that's why I had to really get the professional sound so that, people aren't swayed away before they even see the work you can do. You can't be scaring people with, a thug accent and all that. So, but when my mom would get mad, oh my gosh, that Jamaican accent just flies right out. It's like they keep it in their back pocket. So yeah, that's actually why I talk like that. But, the the being able to talk where people can, I understand you and feel comfortable listening to you, it's a good little skill. I gotta be honest. It's like I talk to some people where you can only listen to them for 5 minutes. You're like, oh my gosh, ew. Like your voice, it's like nails on a chalkboard the way they sound. So yeah, but anyways, that's my little story on why I speak like that. One day I might have my mom on here and I'll talk to her and you'll hear how she sounds. But yeah. Anywho, that was my story on, I don't even know what you'd call this, but that was my story on why I sound like a frat boy. Anyways, take care and I'll see you guys in the next video.